They say the more things change, the more they stay the same, yet nothing remains constant in the small car class. For so many years, it was a category dominated by Ford, yet here we are in 2019 with the 4th generation Focus, and now it's the underdog. Life won't be easy for the all-new Focus, not with Kia's terrific new Cerato GT, fresh and fighting fit, Hyundai's likeable i30, Toyota's reborn Corolla, and Volkswagen's evergreen Golf vying for your attention. I've got a feeling that if the new German-built Focus is anything less than great, it could crash faster than the Hindenburg. Too soon? The small hatch class starts to become interesting around the 30 grand mark, and that's where we're at. Kicking off with the Hyundai i30 N-Line with optional metallic paint for $29,985 before on-road costs. Recently facelifted and improved, the i30 N-Line replaces the former Drive Car of the Year winning i30 SR, carrying over its mechanicals while channeling the visual toughness and matte charcoal menace of its hot hatch i30N big brother. A muscular body kit, 18-inch alloys, bright red seat belts, and huggy perforated leather front buckets with red stitching and faux carbon fibre trim edges man up the N-Line nicely. The Focus ST line also brings some sporting flavour, and with an optional $1,250 driver assistance pack, some impressive safety electronics for its affordable $30,890 sticker price, if you include our test car's lustrous ruby red prestige paint. 4 auto up-down windows and wireless phone charging add some equipment garnish, but its lack of front parking sensors, leather trim and front seat heating cooling means the Focus is outdone by Kia's Cerato GT. Speaking of which, it's the Cerato GT, sharply priced at $32,510 drive away if you include metallic paint, that sets the equipment benchmark here. It may be lacking a height-adjustable front passenger seat and one-touch windows, however its ribbed leather seats with electric adjustment and memory for the driver, full LED head and tail lights, front and rear parking sensors, and fancy machine-faced 18-inch alloys mark this new-gen Kia as standout value. That's more equipment than Toyota's top-spec Corolla, the ZR, priced at $30,820 including metallic paint, but before on-road costs. The Corolla does have its highlights, including striking 18-inch alloys, seductive ultra-suede seat trim, this group's only head-up display, and 4 auto up-down windows. If you add $1,500 worth of driver assistance package, the Volkswagen Golf 110 TSI Comfortline nails all the equipment basics. For $31,690 before on-road costs, the mid-spec Golf boasts 17-inch alloys, 4 auto up-down windows, keyless entry and start, and rear seat air vents, though alongside its range-topping rivals, the Comfortline's trim is more hard-wearing than haute couture. Now, the first thing that comes to mind when you get in a Golf is that this Mark 7 generation is now 6.5 years since launch, and it still sets a benchmark for the quality of these plastics and just the general smoothness of the way things operate. And in particular, the center armrest in Volkswagen Audi cars that just comes out smoothly and gently ratchets up to a whole bunch of positions, and yet no one else does it. What the Golf doesn't have is razzle-dazzle, and that's something that's applied to lower-level German cars for such a long time. It is quite austere in here compared to the glitz of the Kia, yet everything it is here that you need. You've got height-adjustable front seats, you've got these amazing carpet-lined door bins that actually will take a 1.5 litre bottle, and you've got proper door grips in the doors, you've got proper grips in the roof. All of the basics are absolutely perfect. So if you're not won over by the whole charcoal of the interior, I think the more that you use the Golf, the more that it wins you over with its underlying excellence. For so long, the 7th generation Golf has been the benchmark for backseat comfort because this seat is just so damn good at seating people in terms of under thigh support, in terms of being able to seat 3 people, in terms of having great door grabs and a center armrest, which is something that the Focus doesn't have, and rear air vents, which was one of the first to have in the back seat in the small car class. But now that I've sat in the new generation Ford, in the VW you notice that you don't have as much leg room, the seat isn't as supportive under your thighs, there's a really big transmission hump here in the middle, and just the general vision isn't quite as good as its blue oval rival. Dare I say it, it's actually been beaten. Where the new Corolla works best is in the front seat. This car is definitely at its best for 2 people. These seats are big and huggy and generous, though the passenger doesn't have height adjustment. The JBL stereo in this ZR spec car is really strong and what you'd expect of a $31,000 hatchback, and the general quality of this car is what you expect out of a high-end Japanese brand. Where it starts to fall down a bit is there's just not enough places to put stuff. And these crapo graphics on this screen, please Toyota, give us Apple CarPlay, get rid of that stuff. Unfortunately, the new Corolla's goodness ends at about the B pillar, because back here, you're a second-class citizen. Not that the seat is uncomfortable, because it's actually quite supportive and it's set higher than the fronts, but these seats are just too big. They're too big to look around, and this one doesn't have height adjustment, so it's up high and directly in the left passenger's line of vision. We have bottle holders in the doors and 2 cup holders in this armrest and these map pockets here, but that is it. No door pockets, nothing. And we've got 2 air vents here, but potentially they're too low to really do any good anyway. I just wish Toyota had tried harder. Now, no Focus interior has been particularly great in my opinion, but this one takes a big step forward. It's so much more neatly arranged, everything is easier to use, it's a lot less imposing, and the quality of the plastics has taken a big step towards Volkswagen. We've got carpet in the door bins here, we've got squidgy plastic on top of the dash, we've got a superb steering wheel, and clarity and ease of use, which is surely what you want in an everyday car like this. Where it starts to fall down a little bit, you know, it has a sliding armrest here, but it doesn't have that ratchet height adjustment of Volkswagen's benchmark system. And while this rotary transmission dial looks great, it's actually kind of clumsy and annoying to use, just like it was in a Jaguar. In the back seat as well, the new Focus really moves the game on. There is so much room in this car. It has heaps of leg room, heaps of toe room, even with the front seats lowered as low as they'll go, and both of them are height adjustable. And sitting here, I have this amazing view with an optional sunroof in this car that makes it rival an SUV for its feeling of airiness. But also, this seat is really supportive. The backrest is in the right position, the under thigh support is right, the center seat is even sittable and comfortable, and even though there's no air vents in the back seat, there's 2 in the center dash and the front that are really big and really quite high, and you can feel all the air moving through the interior, and I think that's a good enough compromise. Well, the Kia Cerato has come such a long way from the poo that used to be acceptable in a Korean car last decade. This car actually exceeds expectation in the quality of the interior and even the design of the car. Like these really cool eyeball air vents here that you twist to turn on and off, the bling on the steering wheel, really high quality leather, not the slippery, awful vinyl crap that it used to have. It's got a JBL stereo in this car. We've got heated and fan cooled seats, and this Cerato GT we're in now is 32.5 grand drive away, and it blows you away with how much equipment it has. It's a little bit classier than the closely related i30 inside, and it definitely has more kit for the money. It's also better laid out than the Toyota, a much more simple switchgear, and it has way more bling than the Golf. What we're sitting in now could be the interior from a 40 grand hot hatch, and that from a Kia is mind-blowing. Where the Cerato GT starts to fall down is in the back seat. Now, it's got heaps of room, but it squanders that space by having a seat that is just not comfortable enough. I'm too far reclined, and as the car goes around corners and does more driving, you find yourself slowly submarining down in the seat. There isn't enough under thigh support, there's too much backrest recline, you've got a rock hard thing on the back of the seat here, and besides the air vents, there just isn't really anything in here to get you excited. Now, Hyundai has clearly learned something from its own N hot hatch model by giving this matte charcoal, much more masculine interior treatment to the N line, which replaces the old SR. It has all the good things that the N has, like this terrific steering wheel, these really huggy and great seats, and actually a really nice layout. What it doesn't have is some of the equipment of the Kia. You need to spend 35 grand on the i30 N-Line Premium to have equipment that matches the Cerato GT, like heated and cooled seats, like electric front seats, like having the name brand stereo, all that sort of stuff. But I think that this $5,500 cheaper version gets all the basics right, and I don't know whether you need all those things. Now, you might notice that the i30 doesn't have as much legroom as the Cerato does, but the quality of the seating in here is quite a bit better. I'm sitting higher in a seat with my legs lower. I've got more under thigh support. I've got the correct rake for my back, for the backrest. It's just so much more comfortable to sit in. You do feel more claustrophobic because it is more confined, but at the same time, sitting in here is a lot better place to be. Behind these front seats though, you don't have height adjustment in the front passenger, so it does sit higher than the drivers. So if you're OCD and you can't handle things lining up, don't buy this car. And there isn't a whole lot of toe room here either. I'm having the tops of my feet pressing underneath the driver's seat, which is as low as it'll go. However, you do get air vents, and actually, dare I say it, I think the quality of Hyundai's rear seat air vents is actually better than Volkswagen's. Intriguingly, it's the Ford Focus's 1.5 litre direct injection 3-cylinder turbo petrol that's the most unusual engine here. Producing a useful 134 kilowatts and a chubby 240 newton meters, it's tied to a first-in-class 8-speed automatic transmission and managed a benchmark 5.2 litres per 100 kilometres on our test cycle. I don't think you'd be in a Ford Focus if the car's driving experience wasn't all about the dynamics. And thank God the 4th generation holds true to its ancestors, and that this car's handling and steering and balance are sensational. They're easily the best in class, and yet it has a polish about it that has this comfort mixed with that in this ST line that somehow means that it can be super tight and super sporty, but also nicely well-rounded and not affected by bumps that really upset the Kia. That said, at low speeds, the Focus is quite knobbly, but there's such a good trade-off when it has a load or the quicker that it goes. Just that control and that feedback is just awesome. Under the bonnet is a 1.5 litre turbo triple that you'd think, oh my God, an economy engine in a sports model, but it's actually really good. It's not that much slower than the 1.6 turbos in the Korean pair, and yet it has this lovely, smooth, charming thruminess about it, mixed with amazing fuel economy. And that's a first for a Ford. About the only thing that I don't like about it, it has moments where it feels like it's just grabbed a big bag of neutral or behaves like a dual clutch when you're parking, which is kind of weird out of a torque converter automatic. If those stats prick your interest, then it's a rinse and repeat scenario in the Cerato GT, with exactly the same drivetrain in a 26 kilo heavier, slightly larger body. The Kia also brings multi-stage induction acoustics to spice up your in-cabin life, though our test car used more fuel at 9.3 litres per 100 kilometres. The thing about the Cerato GT is that it actually shares so much with the i30 N-Line, yet it feels like a different car. The drivetrain has the same specs on paper, but it has a synthesized induction sound that gives it this gurgle that is actually far from offensive. Dare I say it, I kind of actually like it, although it doesn't need it. And it has 2 stages of intensity, when it's in drive or when you just flick the transmission lever like that over to sport, and it makes it a little bit more gurgling. Dynamically, the steering is crisper than the i30s in this car, and again has 3 states of tune, but the handling probably doesn't have quite as much polish. We can even feel it on these smooth roads. There's a knobbliness and a jiggle to the suspension that just takes away something from the comfort of the car. That said, the seats themselves, the drivers gets full electric here for not that much more than what the i30 gets in a full manual seat, and there's something about the general feel of this car that feels expensive, and from a Kia, that's bloody amazing. The Corolla ZR's naturally aspirated 125 kilowatt 2 litre 4-cylinder used quite a lot less fuel than the Korean pair at 7.4 litres per 100 kilometres, though it also concedes quite a chunk of performance. Yet there's a likeable ease to the way Toyota's CVT-equipped hatch gets along, certainly more so than any other Corolla this century. For generations, moving up the Toyota Corolla lineup has been an exercise in diminishing returns, in that the value is never at the top end, it's always in the base shitter. But that no longer applies to this current generation Corolla, because it's actually a really good car. This ZR looks the part with its 18-inch wheels, and it sits the part with these awesome bucket seats with Alcantara trim and a cranking JBL stereo. It has a driver appeal to this car too that the Corolla has lacked in forever. But against the other 4 cars in this test, the Corolla just doesn't quite make it. It doesn't quite have the composure of the Golf or the smoothness. It has equivalent tyre noise to among the worst cars here. And while it handles really well, it just doesn't have the sharpness of the Focus or the entertainment factor of the two Korean cars. And I suppose at the end of the day, while its 2-litre CVT is a really great drivetrain for a 2-litre CVT, it just doesn't have the performance or that sophistication that defines its best rivals. And so in isolation, I love the Toyota Corolla. In this comparison, it's just not quite there. Volkswagen's turbo petrol Golf matches the Corolla's 7.4 litres per 100 kilometre economy, but its engine is smoother and more muscular. Punching out an easy 110 kilowatts and a solid 250 newton metres, it's tied to a seamless 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. Looks can be deceiving when you get in the Golf because this car is now 6 years old and the interior is extremely familiar. So you could dismiss it as being boring and bland and austere. And it's one of those things, austere for sure. But the longer that you spend time in this car, the more you realise why the Golf has been a benchmark since it launched 6 years ago, because it is so bloody good. The drivetrain is slick, the best dual clutch here by some margin. The old 1.4 turbo is a much sweeter engine than the old 1.4 was, and the dynamics of the car, it has this Teflon coated smoothness to it that eludes all of the other cars here besides the Focus. And even then, the Golf still rides with this control that is foreign to everything here. That said, it is austere and it's not an exciting car, but you've got to look at it from this perspective. Buying a Golf 7, even in its twilight years, because the next generation is only months away, you're buying a design classic. You're buying something that doesn't need to change because the fundamentals are so right and the basics of the car are so good that you just need to luxuriate in the design and the engineering, and I don't know, maybe wear a bright colour or something to lighten up your life. The i30 inline features a 1.6 litre direct injection turbocharged 4-cylinder, producing the same 150 kilowatts and 265 newton metres as it did in the previous SR, driving through a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. It's an effortlessly strong engine with reasonable economy of 8.5 litres per 100 kilometres on test, given its level of performance. From a showroom perspective, the i30 inline doesn't have that sizzle of the Cerato GT. It honestly doesn't have quite as polished interior, and it doesn't have the same equipment as its Korean sibling. But there's actually more depth to this car, I think, than the Cerato GT. It rides a bit better than the Kia. It doesn't need to have those induction theatrics because it sounds pretty good on its own. I think it handles ultimately a little bit better just because it has that suspension composure, and even though the steering is a little bit sludgy at times, I think in general the cohesion of the vehicle in its dynamics and the way it drives is a little bit better. And I actually like the things that the new N-Line has inherited from the N, and that is just a whole bunch of matte charcoal plastics on the inside to just make it a little bit more butch, and it just looks a little bit more like its massively lauded hot hatch brother. And I think for the sake of this car's reputation and its image, that's a really good thing. After 3 not quite there generations, the Ford Focus finally delivers where it matters. Packaged to achieve best-in-class space and engineered for best-in-class handling and steering, this handsome blue oval hatchback also manages to ace efficiency, and that's truly a turn up for the books for a turbo petrol Ford. In fact, I'd happily own or recommend any of the 5 cars here, but if I had to name a 30k winner, that car would be the Ford Focus ST line. Smoking hot, but unlikely to go down in flames. Oh, the humanity.